right, let's talk about the Medallion Architecture. We're going to jump right in and tackle one of the most common points of confusion for so many data folks, the bronze layer. You know, when you first see it, it looks so clean, right? So elegant. You've got bronze for your raw stuff, silver for cleaning it up and applying some logic, and gold for those final business-ready insights. What could be simpler? But then the real world hits. Someone asks a totally practical question like, hey, can I just dump my data from a REST API straight into the bronze layer? And right there, that's where the beautiful simplicity kind of gets messy. And we're all left asking, what does raw really even mean? Okay, so let's get into it. To figure this out, we first have to look at the principles of the bronze layer that are giving so many engineers such a headache. So the first big rule you always hear is that bronze data has to be permanent and immutable. You can't change it, ever. It's meant to be this perfect historical archive of everything from the source, which, right off the bat sounds pretty restrictive. And this next one, this is the real kicker. The idea that it has to be a faithful, untouched mirror of the source data as is, well, that just opens up a huge can of worms, doesn't it? What if my source data is a total disaster? What if it's in some weird proprietary format that I can't even query? What then? All this frustration, it actually feels really familiar. It's surprisingly similar to the kinds of complaints you hear people make about Agile Scrum all the time. Sounds a little weird, I know, but stick with me. I mean, the parallels are pretty striking. For both, people complain about fuzzy definitions and how they get treated like these super rigid frameworks when they're really meant to be flexible guidelines. A big one is the lack of practical advice. And so what happens? Organizations try to cram their own unique processes into this rigid box, and it just ends up causing way more problems than it solves. So how do we solve this whole puzzle? Well, the key, the absolute crucial point, is understanding a really important distinction the architecture makes between two different ways of handling data. And here it is. This is the secret sauce, technical mediation. Now, this is not about changing what the data means for the business. Nope, this is purely about tackling the technical headaches. Think about taking a crazy, deeply nested JSON file, you know the kind I'm talking about, and just converting it into a nice, flat, queryable table so your tools can actually read the thing. And this table here, it lays it out perfectly. The bronze layer is for that technical mediation. The analogy of translating a book is spot on. You're not changing the story, you're just making it readable. The silver layer, though, that's for functional transformation. That's when you actually become the editor. You're cleaning things up, applying business rules, and creating that polished corporate view of the data. Okay, so with that concept in mind, let's get super practical. To land or not to land? When do you actually need that extra step, a landing zone, before you even hit the bronze layer? So let's bring it all the way back to our original question. When is your source data so complex, so messy, that you really need a preliminary staging area before you officially call it bronze? Here's the simple answer. You need a landing zone when you have heavy-duty technical mediation to do. We're talking about stuff like decompressing huge files, checking checksums, untangling some ancient gnarly data format, or just doing a quick integrity check on a file before it becomes a permanent record. Think of the landing zone as your temporary workshop. The bronze layer is the permanent library. You do the messy prep work in the shop before putting the book on the shelf for good. But, and this is the big but, if that API data we talked about is already pretty clean, if you can write it directly into a queryable versioned format like Delta Lake, then you should absolutely go directly to the bronze layer. That is the ideal path. No need for that extra step. Now, this brings up another classic point of confusion I hear all the time. People will look at this and ask, wait a minute, isn't the bronze layer just a fancy, modern name for the old-school data warehouse staging area? The short answer is a hard no. They are fundamentally different things. A bronze layer is designed to be a permanent, long-term historical archive. It's the foundational record you can always replay from. A traditional staging area, on the other hand, is just a temporary holding pen. Data lands there, it gets transformed, and then, poof, the staging data is often wiped clean. It's transient, not permanent. So let's zoom out. What's the big takeaway from all of this? How should you really be approaching this architecture in your own projects? Here's the most important thing to remember. The Medallion Architecture isn't a rigid rulebook you have to follow perfectly. It's a set of guardrails. It's there to help you, to keep you on the right path so you can build a data platform that's scalable, auditable, and simple. It's not a straitjacket.
Once you really understand this flexibility, that key difference between technical mediation for bronze and functional transformation for silver, you are empowered to make much smarter design choices. You can build simpler, more efficient, and way more scalable data platforms. So the real question to leave you with is, how are you going to use these guardrails to shape your next data project?